We're glad you're here. And this program is part one of a three-part series. On the right slide, yes. So it's a three-part series about healthy brain aging. This month, we're going to dive deep into the topics of diet and exercise and how they can be positive and sometimes negative influences on our brain health. Next month, we'll talk about sleep and stress. And then in August, we'll finish this three-part series with socialization and cognitive fitness. So we really hope that you're a part of this three-part series. And of course, we ask you to invite your friends and family, colleagues, clients, you name it, because it is just important information to know as we are all getting older, and also information to know as we want to reduce our risk for dementia, but also other illnesses that we might develop as we get older. So we are happy to offer 1.5 CE credits for social workers, nursing, licensed professional counselors, and certificates of attendance. Those are specific to the state of Texas, but we're happy to provide any of those certificates. After today's program, Marty will send out an email that has information that you get a copy of the slides, upcoming programs with Marty and his team, but also there will be a SurveyMonkey evaluation in that email. For you to claim your credit, you're required to complete that evaluation. The evaluation will close at the end of the business day on June the 19th, and then we will start to process all those CE credits. It does take a little while, so if you will please allow about 4 weeks after June 19th for us to process those and get them out to your email so you have that. Marty, did you want to talk about the survey?
Real quickly, I want to make the contrast between the SurveyMonkey and then there'll also be a Google survey. The Google survey is our survey from the Area Agency on Aging. It really helps us to report back on our goals and objectives we set forth when we applied for the money to continue to do these webinars and continue to do them. So please, we ask you to do both of them. The Google survey should give you a chance to go there as soon as you log out of the webinar. But if you don't, it will also be emailed along with the SurveyMonkey survey. So there's 2 different surveys. Please note the SurveyMonkey survey is required for CEUs. That's what's going to trigger you to be considered for CEUs.
All right, thanks, Marty. And I did just happen to see in chat, certificates of attendance will not be given out today. They're included in the SurveyMonkey process and how we have to process our stuff. So it'll be within 4 weeks, closing 4 weeks after today. So sorry about that. We appreciate your patience, but we're happy to provide them. All right, so talking about diet and exercise today, and I'll just remind you of what Marty said. If you have a question, please feel free to put it in the Q&A. There will be plenty of time at the end of today's program to answer questions. So please make sure that you put those in there because we'll hopefully get to all of them. But my name is Jamie, and I am with the James L. West Center for Dementia Care, and we are a community. We're located here in Fort Worth, Texas, but we provide, service persons impacted by dementia. And we do that through a variety of services. We have a long-term care community here in Fort Worth. We have an adult day program. We have short-term rehab that's dementia specific. And we also have our education, which we are happy to offer. And it's part of our gift back to the community as we are a nonprofit. So we provide this education and partner with great organizations like North Texas Area Agency on Aging and others to provide this education. And hopefully you've been on some past programs. We are, most of our education is dementia specific, and then of course, healthy brain aging as well. Because as we want to care partners and professionals that are providing care for those living with dementia, we also want to age well and raise the awareness that dementia and Alzheimer's disease, or talk about what it is and what it isn't, dispel any misunderstandings or miscommunications about it. But also know that we can age really well. But we got to do some work to do that. So there's a lot of influencers of brain health. And our lifestyles have a powerful impact on the health of our body and, of course, our brain. And our brain is affected by virtually every aspect of our lives. This includes stress. It includes the foods that we eat. It includes the amount of physical activity we do, the quality of our sleep, staying connected into the community, and etc. So this series, this three-part series, we're going to describe each one of these kind of 6 influencers of brain health and really dive deep into them and how they affect our brain, good and bad. But also we're going to talk about practical ways to start implementing positive change so we can age well, but also reduce our risk for developing dementia, or Alzheimer's disease or related dementias. So just a few things about what normal aging looks like in regards to our brain, because there are changes that happen. And that phrase, use it or lose it, doesn't just pertain to our muscles, it pertains to our brain health as well. So as we get older, science has shown that certain parts of our brain may shrink. And specifically, those parts are our prefrontal cortex, which is right up here where our frontal lobe is or our forehead is, and then our hippocampus. And the hippocampus is the part of our brain that houses our short-term memory, and it's our learning center. So we do know as we get older that those parts of our brain may shrink just as a normal part of aging. We can see a reduction in the neurotransmitters in our brain, and the number of neurons can be reduced. And the white matter may degenerate and decrease in amount. And the white matter is really, it helps our neurons send signals to all the areas of our body, like our spinal cord. And then we can see our arteries narrow, or they're less pliable. There might be less growth of capillaries within our brain. So there are changes that happen, but these changes do not translate to you have Alzheimer's disease or a related dementia. These are just normal parts of aging. But the other a great thing about aging is that we also have this adaptive neuroplasticity. So it does come back to this use it or lose it. If we start to incorporate lifestyle, we continue to learn new skills and gain new knowledge, we take care of our overall health, our whole body, whole person health. We're involved in our environment and that we have positive stuff going on in our environment. We'll talk more about that. And even genetics. All of these play a role into our optimal functioning. And it's optimal brain functioning, but it's also optimal body functioning as well. And this, with our neuroplasticity of our brain, we can continue to adapt and change over a lifetime. So even though there might be normal changes that happen, we can be plastic, we can be pliable and malleable and adapt and change over the course of our lifetime and improve. So just a couple of quick stats. These are the 2024 Alzheimer's Association facts and figures. They put out this report every year. And a couple of numbers I just want to point out to us is at the very top, it talks about that nearly 7 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's disease or a related dementia. And that's at the very bottom in the middle there, that 70% of dementia caregivers feel stressed when coordinating care. And I would say that statistic might be a little bit low because some of you might be a personal caregiver of somebody with dementia, or even somebody that's just aging, or maybe you're aging yourself, and that can have some stress that comes along with it. So the brain influencers that we're going to talk about over these next 3 months, like I mentioned, will help us reduce our risk for dementia as well as age the best way that we can age. And I want to talk about the causes of memory loss and confusion. So there are progressive dementias. So these are our neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, frontotemporal dementia. You see them listed there on the left-hand side of the screen. And dementia is a group of symptoms that somebody has that interferes with their functioning ability and their ability to get through their day-to-day activities. And what causes those symptoms, that whether it's memory loss or confusion or something like that, can come from a variety of sources. And that one of those sources might be a progressive dementia, like Alzheimer's disease or vascular dementia, etc. But incorporating positive lifestyle choices and changes that we're going to talk about can promote brain health. And we can start doing it at any age. So I don't want you to start tuning out and think, well, I haven't been doing these positive changes or positive lifestyle choices so far, so I'm not going to start now, or it's too late for me to start, because that's not the case. We can start at any age, and we will start to see positive benefits on our brain health and our overall whole person health as well. So there's really no excuse to not start implementing the steps that we're going to talk about today. But there are also, like I mentioned, it really that group of symptoms that somebody has that looks like dementia, it really does, you have to ask yourself, well, what does that come from? Because there are other causes of memory loss and confusion. Just because you or maybe somebody you know or love starts to have some memory loss challenges or confusion doesn't mean, or they're having changes that aren't quote unquote normal, does not mean it's Alzheimer's disease or related dementia. It can come from a variety of these other causes. Whether it's an infection or an immune disorder, they have an unmanaged health condition or something that's not being diagnosed, whether it can be related to their heart health, diabetes, longer breathing issues. Maybe they're having some sleep issues that's causing, like a sleep apnea, that's causing some challenges during the day. A metabolic problem or nutritional deficiency. They have poor eating habits. It can be a medication interaction that causes these symptoms of confusion or memory loss or poor judgment or even mood changes. You know, these same symptoms that look like the progressive dementias. And then they might have some unhealthy lifestyle choices they've been practicing, whether it's smoking or abusing drugs and alcohol. And then unmanaged stress, or they have unmanaged depression or anxiety. And we point these out because we want you to know that these symptoms of dementia, so, you know, it might be somebody that we love is starting to show symptoms of dementia. We don't have to jump to conclusions that they have an Alzheimer's disease or a progressive dementia, because it can be something else that's causing those symptoms. We just want to figure out, well, what is causing my symptoms so I can get the best treatment for it. And that is getting a proper diagnosis from a trusted doctor or trusted group of doctors that can help really diagnose something accurately, do the proper treatment for it, then also start to put into place some positive lifestyle changes that influence whether a positive treatment or it's going to help with the treatment, or it might even be preventable for something down the road, or it can help us or something not to reoccur later down the road. So it's just putting in these positive lifestyle choices. But it's important for us to know this, if we don't already know, that the causes, the memory loss and confusion causes that come along with aging, or that they're not, doesn't look like normal aging, it doesn't mean they have to be Alzheimer's disease or dementia. But we do need to know what the risk factors are for Alzheimer's disease and dementia. And on the screen here, it lists some risk factors that we don't have a lot of control over, okay? So age is the #1 risk factor for an Alzheimer's disease or a related dementia. So the older we get, the more susceptible we are to developing an Alzheimer's disease or related dementia. And unless you have the cure-free aging, not that aging needs a cure, but then that is a risk factor that we don't have a lot of influence over getting older. What we do have influence over is how healthy we are as we get older, and that's what we're talking about. Family also, there is, without getting too much in the weeds with this, there is some genetic components that have been shown that that can increase your risk for certain types of dementia if they're in your family. And there are over 100 different types of dementia, so this can be, you know, your most common type of dementia: Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, Lewy body dementia, frontotemporal. And those common types do have some genetic components, like I said, that can increase your risk for developing dementia, but each dementia looks a little bit different, and the genetics that comes along with that. There are some dementias that are very rare that are, the genetic component is deterministic. So it's not a risk factor, it's deterministic, whereas Alzheimer's disease, for instance, if you have a parent or a sibling, your risk factor has increased a little bit to develop it, but it doesn't mean that you are destined to get Alzheimer's disease, so it's not deterministic. And the more we learn about Alzheimer's disease and dementia, the more kind of these genetic components kind of pop up, but they are just looking at them as risk factors. So if we have those risk factors potentially, then we can do some of these positive influences with our brain health that can offset some of those risk factors. But I also want to say that if you don't have this disease or Alzheimer's disease or related dementia in your family, it doesn't mean that you aren't going to not get it. So it doesn't matter essentially whether it's in your family or not, because we're still susceptible to developing a type of dementia. So we all want to start incorporating some of these positive lifestyle choices we're about to discuss. And then there's mild cognitive impairment. And mild cognitive impairment, excuse me, it's a diagnosis that somebody gets that has some abnormal aging, like they have abnormal memory loss issues as they're aging, but it's not severe enough to interfere with their day-to-day functioning. So they do have some things that look abnormal, but it's not affecting their day-to-day functioning. And generally, there's not another cognitive issue happening. Okay, so it's just that one, maybe it's memory loss, cognitive functioning, but there's not anything else there. With a progressive dementia, there has to be at least 2 brain functioning issues for it to be considered a dementia. So this can be mistakenly diagnosed. And on the, you think about dementia, it's on a continuum. So depending on the person, this mild cognitive impairment or MCI diagnosis might be the start of dementia. So some people that have mild cognitive impairment do go on to develop dementia. So we start to see other changes in their brain in regards to other functionings of their brain. Other people that have MCI are able to maintain and sustain where they're at. So they might have some abnormal memory loss issues, but they just sustain or maintain where they're at over the course of their lifetime. And then there are other individuals that can get better from the mild cognitive impairment. So again, it's very individualistic, but this can increase your risk factor for a progressive dementia. And then trauma to the brain. If we've had past trauma to the brain, this is something we can't go back and change, unfortunately, but that can increase your risk. And that can be head injuries, or it is head injuries, whether it's from a car accident, maybe a sport you're playing, you name it, any type of trauma can increase your risk. And then Down syndrome. So individuals that have Down syndrome, as they continue to live longer, they start to develop the same plaques and tangles as individuals with Alzheimer's disease. So there are some studies happening in regards to the hormones and chromosomes that come along with that disease and how that all plays in with Alzheimer's disease. But those are some some risk factors that we don't have influence over. And you can see the graph there. This is from Mather Lifeways Institute on Aging, that it has on there that 70% of these risk factors are non-genetic and about 30% are genetic. So we're saying, okay, the majority of this is a non-genetic risk factor. So what are all those influences, or what are all those other risk factors that I do have influence over? And some of them are listed here. Again, over this next 3-part series, we're going to talk a lot about this. But I would imagine you know some of these. If we are abusing or misusing alcohol, drugs, prescription drugs, illicit drugs, but also smoking, that's going to affect, of course, your whole body health, but it's also going to seriously impact your brain health. And it really does seriously increase your risk for developing dementia. Atherosclerosis, this is the clogged arteries. Okay, so they're the arteries, the blood vessels are getting clogged by, maybe it's cholesterol, it's those fat lipids that start to store up, and a lot of this has to do with exercise and diet. Untreated high blood pressure or even low blood pressure, untreated high cholesterol, high homocysteines, it's not on here, but high blood sugar levels, head injury, of course. So going back to that, let's protect our head. Let's wear our seatbelts and wear helmets and things like that. Of course, chronic unmanaged stress, and that's going to be a whole week or a whole class that we talk about that. And obesity or being overweight for a large part of our lives, particularly in middle age, and then unmanaged diabetes. So these are risk factors that we do have influence over, and we're going to talk a lot about these over the next, over this summer, really, on how can I really understand how they influence my brain health, but how can I start doing these positive, practical, everyday ways to make positive changes. And the brain is a very complex but a very fascinating part of who we are. Our healthy brain weighs 3 pounds, but it's also very greedy. So it needs about 25% of all the oxygen that we breathe. So about 1 out of every 4 breaths that we take, all that oxygen goes straight to our brain. It consumes about 25% of all the nutrients that we put into our body, about 70% of our glucose. So it needs, because our brain controls everything that we do. It's working hard all the time. It's telling your heart to beat. It's regulating your body temperature. It might be digesting your lunch right now, but it's your ability to hear what I'm having to say, to process it, to look at the screen, to maybe you're multitasking as well. Your brain's doing everything. So it needs a lot of energy, and it needs to, and if we don't give it the energy that it needs and all the nutrients and all the stuff that it needs, it's not going to be able to function very well. So it is the fattest organ that we have, and we have over 100 billion neurons in our brain that are working hard to make sure everything is functioning the way it needs to be functioning. So we have to make sure that we give it the fuel it needs to do that, the right fuel it needs to do that. So, and we also, a couple of things that maybe misunderstood, that we have the strength and the capacity to make new neurons throughout the course of our lifespan. Even if we have some changes as part of normal aging, we are able to always strengthen some neuronal connections and create new neuronal connections throughout our brain, throughout the course of our life. And we do use 100% of our brain, maybe not 100% of the time, but we do use 100% of it. So there are exercises that we need to make sure that all functions of our brain, or all those areas of our brain are strong and that are getting the fuel that it needs, so we can use 100% of our brain. So we'll start with diet today, and then we'll talk about exercise. But the role of nutrition, there's protective and preventative ways that nutrition can affect our bodies. So it can protect us from disease, but it can also prevent disease. And it can also help with optimal health. Help with it. There's also optimal health, and it's being increasingly recognized of how important our diet is to our optimal health for both our body and our brain. There's an abundance of like specific nutrients, and we'll talk about some of these like iron and vitamins B12 that have effects on our brain's cognitive processing, as well as our emotions. So we're talking about brain health today and the cognitive processing and functions of it, but we're also going to talk about how it helps with our emotions and our psychological well-being as well, both diet and exercise. So our diet does have the potential to influence either negatively or positively our mental functioning, but also our psychological functioning. I will say, before I get into any more of this, that any changes that you put into your diet, or any changes that you start to do as far as an exercise regimen, you really need to discuss this with a doctor. I am not a doctor. This is my disclaimer. I am not a registered dietitian. I am presenting you with this information that we know from science and from studies that this is optimal brain aging, and it is also a way to reduce your risk. But any changes you start to make in regards to diet and exercise do need to be talked to with a trusted doctor, because each one of us is a very unique individual. So there's not a one-size-fits-all diet, not a one-size-fits-all exercise routine, because we'll have to take into consideration our own personal things that are going on. And this can include other illnesses or diseases we might be living with. This might be medications that we're on. It might be injuries we're recovering from, you name it, okay? It's also how much are we moving throughout the day and all these things. So please take that into consideration as we are moving forward and you start to pick up on some things that you can start to do. So, because I am going to ask you to start picking up on, well, that's an easy thing I can start to incorporate today. Because the goal of this series is for you to take away easy, practical, everyday things you can start doing to change, to make positive changes in your brain health. That way we can age optimally. So our brains and our heart are directly connected. So as we finish out today's program, you're going to hear me talk a lot about heart health. And I think we know more, we've heard more about heart health, but what we do for our heart that's good is automatically going to be good for our brain. And anything that we do that's not so good for our heart is automatically going to be not so good for our brains. So this is, you just please keep that in mind. They're directly connected. So heart health is brain health, and brain health is heart health. So it only, when we do these positive influences, it's going to strengthen our immune system. It's going to reduce our stress response in our body. It's going to increase our energy. It is going to increase our resiliency, and this is physical resiliency, but mental resiliency as well, emotional resiliency. And it reduces our risk for all other illnesses, including dementia, but of course, heart illnesses or heart diseases as well. And we want to think about eating smart foods. So I'm going to talk here about what a diet should include, or a brain healthy diet should include. And eating these smart brain healthy foods on a daily basis really can increase our brain health. There was a study done once that showed that as many as 80% of people that had Alzheimer's disease also had cardiovascular disease. So upon autopsy, they were doing, and close to 80% had Alzheimer's disease, also had cardiovascular disease. So that just kind of shows that the importance of how we take care of our full bodies, but our heart and our brains. And I like this quote here. Do you live to eat, or do you eat to live? And sometimes we have to ask ourselves that. And I'm not saying every day we have to, deprive ourselves of what we really enjoy. If it's that piece of candy or it's that small bag of Cheetos, whatever it may be, we don't want to deprive ourselves because that can backfire. But know that, and maybe change our perspective on food, that food is medicine. Food can, like I said earlier, either prevent or protect ourselves from diseases. So ask yourself, is food your medicine? And how can we use food as medicine? So a brain healthy diet should include some of these areas. So omega-3 fatty acids is one of the things that is one of the best things that we can eat for our brain. And you can find this in cold water fish, which is halibut or salmon or tuna, sardines as well. Flax seeds, avocados, walnuts. But if we have a diet rich in omega-3 fatty acids, that is really great protection for our health, our brain health. Antioxidants, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what antioxidants are and how do we get them, but your diet should be rich with antioxidants. Leafy greens or dark vegetables. And in a lot of the studies, what this comes down to, our diet is a more plant-based diet is showing to be more brain health positive. And a plant-based diet doesn't mean you have to get rid of all animal byproducts or meats or anything, but just the majority of your plate is plant-based, okay? And plants contain all the nutrients that a body needs. So it has all the carbohydrates, sugars, proteins, you name it, that are in those plants as we eat them. So they're also all the fats that we need. So healthy fats, in general, the healthy fats come from plants, and they're generally healthier fats than we get from animals. And then we get those through nuts, dark vegetables, avocados, seeds, certain oils like olive oils or vegetable-based type oils, beans, etc. And then berries and organic dark fruit. So this are the berries and the organic dark fruit, as why it doesn't say necessarily fruit in general. Fruit is great because we get the natural sugars out of the fruit, and our bodies need that. But it leans more towards the dark fruits or the berries because of the flavonoids that are in them. And the flavonoids are a protective factor, and they improve our cognition. And they're also the flavonoids are the one that give the darker color. But another thing we can do is start just adding more color and variety to our diet, because sometimes you think, or at least I know for me, I think, gosh, diet. Ugh. Diet just has this negative connotation to it, but diet is just what we eat. We're all on a diet because it's what we eat every day. But if I want to change my diet, right, instead of thinking, okay, now I got to get this book and I got to read all this stuff and I got to get down in the weeds and dig down deep, how do I do this diet? And what's the best diet for me? It doesn't have to be that complicated unless you want it to be. But it can also be more simple of say, okay, I'm just going to add more natural color and more variety to my everyday diet. And that is natural color. There's a lot of color in food that's processed and not natural. You mentioned Cheetos earlier. That's not a natural color. Okay, that is processed foods. We're not looking at that. We're looking at those natural colors. Like there's, the carrots, the sweet potatoes, there's purple carrots, there's different colored potatoes, there's different colored tomatoes, you name it. Let's get out there. There's different colored cauliflowers, just adding more color and more variety to our plates. That's going to enhance the palate that you have, but you're going to get different nutrients from each one of those. And that can be an easier way to change your diet as opposed to maybe taking a more complicated route, but it's up to you. And then we do always want to add more fiber into our diet, especially as we get older. And we can get fiber from whole grains, fruits, leafy greens. And it suggests there the amount of fiber for women each day. But again, you want to talk to your doctor what's the best for you. And then always adding more fluids. And this is, I would just say, adding more water. But you can get fluids from fruit that we eat, vegetables that we eat, the greens we eat, etc. Adding more water. But maybe sometimes we need to reduce the other fluids if we're drinking a lot of sugary juices or sodas or a lot of caffeine, a big amount of caffeine or even alcohol. So let's talk about antioxidants, because the antioxidants are a big part of a brain healthy diet and a whole person well-being. But antioxidants, our body generates antioxidants naturally, and it really is just a byproduct of the work that our cells do every day. So our cells are working hard to digest our food, and those cells kind of create some waste that they have called free radicals. And free radicals, so they're generated naturally by us, but we can also get these free radicals from certain foods that we eat. If we're eating a lot of processed foods, it can also come from the environment, such as like air pollution or maybe water pollution. There might be smoke that we're inhaling, sun damage, things like that. So it creates these free radicals that are unstable molecules, and they go around and they damage other cells. So the visual I have here, is that free radicals are kind of like trash or waste buildup in our brain. And the antioxidants act as trash men that come through and get rid of that waste or that trash throughout our brains. Because if we continue to allow the waste and trash to build up in our brains, it's going to attack and really damage our healthy cells. And that can be very detrimental because it can change the DNA and the collagen to our cells, and we don't want that. So the antioxidants will get rid of or help get rid of the waste and trash. And we can get antioxidants from a lot of things in our diet. They're listed down here. So we have, berries, dark chocolates, pecans, beans, artichokes. But also, here's a great list of where we can get antioxidants out of our diet. Vitamin C and E are the best way to add antioxidants to our diet. We can get those, and it's listed here, but yellow peppers, oranges, tomatoes, berries, etc. Vitamin E comes in almonds, spinach, avocados, sunflowers. Beta carotene, and it's that orange stuff, or that makes the vegetables orange. So whether it's carrots or sweet potatoes, but also there's dark leafy greens we get beta carotene from. Lipoic acid, uh, which is important to our brain health as a protective agent. It has spinach, yams, tomatoes. We also need to get minerals from our foods, and specifically selenium and manganese. And again, there's some listed things there that have where we can get those through our diet. Coenzyme Q10 are flavonoids, and it's talking about plants like grapeseed extract, the phenols produced by plants, and this is where we get the red grapes and the cranberries, those dark berries I mentioned, the polyphenols, and you can get polyphenols through fruits and beverages, but you can also get those through green tea. If you've heard the positive benefits about green tea, because there's a lot of polyphenols in those, and then the phytoestrogens as well. So this is a list that has where we can get those antioxidants. And if we can just increase those in our diets, so adding more of that to your plate every day, it's really going to increase those antioxidants, which is really going to be beneficial for your brain health, because your diet does need to be rich with antioxidants, because it protects against those age-related cognitive declines, the normal ones that we talked about, but also it can help with our cognitive functioning as well. People that had a diet rich in antioxidants fared better on cognitive testing than those that were not on a diet enriched in antioxidants. So we talked about adding antioxidants into our diet, but if we know that we're in an environment that might be damaging, like we're in a highly polluted environment, or there's smoke that we're around, or anything like that, maybe is there a way that we can lessen the smoke or lessen some of those environmental toxins as you can. You know, we're here in the city in Fort Worth. I don't know that I can lessen any pollution in the air, but I can put some stuff in place, you know, make sure my filters are cleaned in my house, and different, you know, use water filters and stuff like that to help lessen the environmental toxins I might not have control over, as we're also adding the antioxidants into our diet. So there are a couple of diets that have been shown. If you are interested in diving deeper into a particular diet, the Mediterranean diet and the MIND diet have been shown over and over again that they are brain healthy diets, but they also can reduce your risk quite a bit for developing Alzheimer's disease and dementia. And they're fairly easy to follow, which I appreciate. So the Mediterranean diet, it's primarily plant-based, but as you can see, not always. I like this because their food pyramid at the very bottom, it has daily physical exercise. Okay, that is the base of it. But then it has those whole grains, quinoas, those complex carbohydrates, right? That don't spike our blood sugar, but it's what our cells need to have the energy. And then it has our fruits, the nuts and legumes, the vegetables, olive oils, cheese, the fish, the meats, the poultry, eggs, sweets, and it even includes red meat once a month as well. So this is a great diet if you wanted to look more into that. The study has shown that, what was it? Oh, it's right on the screen, that the best you adhere, the strictly you adhere to the diet, you can lower your risk for not only Alzheimer's disease, but Parkinson's disease and cancer by 35 to 50%. Again, depending on how strictly you adhere to it. And then there's the MIND diet. And this is a hybrid between the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet. And the DASH diet is the dietary approaches to stop hypertension. Okay. This diet, again, has been shown to reduce cardiovascular conditions or the risk of cardiovascular conditions, but also reduce your risk for Alzheimer's disease by as much as 53%, depending on how much you adhere to the diet. But this one has a little bit of a different approach. So it talks about easy to follow components. So it's 10 healthy food groups and 5 unhealthy food groups. And so 15 dietary components. So it's basically saying if you can include these 10 healthy food groups in your daily diet or weekly diet, then you're great. And then completely limit, or really lessen the 5 unhealthy food groups in your daily, weekly diet, then you're doing pretty good. So it's a little bit easier to follow, I think, because it's just incorporating these 10 healthy things and really getting rid of, eliminating the 5 unhealthy ones. But those are 2 that you can look into on your own to learn more about them if you're interested. But also our diets contain, our healthy brain diet also consists of maintaining a normal body weight. Okay, that's very important. Reducing the intake of high fat, like saturated fat foods and high cholesterol foods, not eliminating them, just reducing, it's in moderation, right? Drinking plenty of water. We talked about increasing our fluids, sticking to those smart brain healthy fluids that we just walked through. And then drinking alcohol in moderation and coffee in moderation. So quickly about that, the alcohol in moderation and why there's little asterisks by that is that I will say right now, heavy alcohol use or abusing any alcohol is very detrimental to brain health, heart health, whole body health. And that's not what we are suggesting or what the science is suggesting either. But it has said that a few drinks a week can have a protective factor in brain health. And generally, it is red wine that the studies are showing because of the polyphenols, because it comes from that dark fruit, the dark skinned fruit, is where they're getting that from. So it can be protective, but it is a few drinks a week and it's spread over, and it's really 1 glass or 1 drink a day for a man or a woman. It's not, if I'm doing a few, so what's that 3 drinks? I'm gonna do 3 drinks in a night, or I'm gonna wait till Friday and make all my drinks come up. I'm gonna do all 5 drinks, on Friday night, because that is abusing the alcohol. But it's 1 drink a day, okay, for a man and a woman, and it's the serving size. So a serving size for a woman is a little bit less than a serving size for a man. So please hear me when I say that. Okay, it's 1 drink a day if you already drink. If you're not already drinking, don't start. All right, there's no need to start. But there's been studies that show that can have a protective factor. Now, as far as the caffeine goes, an excess of caffeine can be detrimental. It can cause brain fog, and it can backfire. It can increase anxiety and other things in certain people. But it also has been shown that it can improve focus, attention span, and other brain skills. So there is some evidence that caffeine, daily caffeine in moderation, right? So it's a few cups a day, can help be a protective factor or reduce your risk for dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Real quickly about supplements. So we're talked about those antioxidants like vitamins A and C and these beta carotenes and all these things that we want to add into our diet. The best way to add these minerals and vitamins into our diet is through the food we eat, because our body processes those vitamins and minerals differently in how we eat them, how it processes and metabolizes them, as opposed to taking a pill. Okay, so we get the most out of it through eating the food. But if for some reason you need a supplement, again, this is where you talk to that trusted doctor, okay, about adding in these supplements, because we don't want it to interact with any other medications we're taking. And also know that the supplement industry is not regulated at all. So you want to buy from a reputable source, talk to your doctor, what's the right dosage for me, etc. But folic acid may be one of those things that you might ask your doctor about, just to get to see what they say, because it is essential to brain function and also emotional health. It protects or affects the production of our neurotransmitters in our brain, or how our neurons talk to each other. And it can also help be protective, so it can act like an antioxidant, because it helps protect against that waste buildup that can happen in the brain. And it's also been shown to, or low folic acid levels have been shown or associated with depression, sleep issues, confusion, appetite loss, nausea, and seizures. And you can see there the variety of things that we can get more folic acid into our diet through the foods that we eat. And then a few other ones here, vitamins B6 and B12. Those are very essential for normal brain function throughout the course of our lifetime. As we get older, our bodies have a harder time keeping up with the vitamins B12 and B6. We just don't, the body doesn't produce as much of it. But you can see listed there how we can incorporate more B6 and B12 into our diet and the foods that we eat. I will say that you do want to look for side effects as well, because vitamin B12 is generally safe if you're taking a supplement, but there can be higher dosage that can cause peripheral damage, can have trouble with movement and sensation as well. Or if you're starting to have, if you and your doctor get together and y'all decide you're going to take supplements and you're starting to have some side effects like stomach pain, appetite loss, fatigue, headaches, something like that, that's when we need to talk to the doctor about, here are the side effects I'm having. Could it be the supplement? What do we need to do about it, etc. Ideally, you're getting enough supplements through the food that we eat. But we talked about vitamin E as the antioxidant, and then vitamin D is important as well. And deficiency in vitamin D can come from a variety of reasons. It can be our weight, it can be poor diet, lack of sunlight exposure as well. But we can also get vitamin D through sun exposure into our skin, but also mushrooms, eggs, and oily fish. So just a few things to think about, particularly as if you're looking at supplements for some of these, to incorporate more of these into our diet, and the best way to do that. And brain draining foods. So we talked about incorporating those positive things into our lifestyles and into our diets, but then there's also brain draining foods that we might need to lessen of. Again, I'm not saying we need to deprive ourselves of anything, but we might need to watch the amount of brain draining foods that we eat as well. So those, and added sugars and salt. I don't think salt's on here, but salt or sodium is one of those as well. If we're getting too much sodium in our diets, we need to look at that, because that increases blood pressure, risk for blood pressure, and of course cardiovascular issues. But any added sugar that's in our diet, and there's a lot of added sugar in the foods, particularly in the Western diet, and then we can very easily become addicted to those added sugars because it does reward our craving center of our brain. So we want to look at this, and sugar has a lot of different names to it. It can be glucose, it can be fructose, allulose, anything that ends in ose, O-U-S-E, probably is a sugar. And don't be fooled by the labels, because it might say no sugar added, but then if you read the ingredients, it might list glucose or allulose or something like that, and that is a form of sugar. So we want to be very aware of that, because you might think, oh, well, the sugar content's not that much when you read the label, but when you read the ingredients, there might be more sugar in there that they're quote unquote hiding for you, that you want to take into your body. So, but there's no reason to avoid sugars, of course, that are naturally present in whole foods. So we do want to look at red meats, high fat butters, creams, cheeses, whole milks. Not that they're bad, it's just doing them in moderation because they are higher in saturated fats and higher in cholesterol. So it just might be the amount that we eat. And then refined or enriched foods. How our food is made and how it's processed can very quickly take away the nutritional benefits from the food. So let's be aware of how the food is made. If it's enriched, the refined process generally strips away the healthiest parts of the grain. I'm thinking like rice or something. You got brown rice and white rice, depending. How it's processed can strip away the good part, the nutrient part of that. Mm-hmm. And refining process does create that easy to digest, like how they say it's food stuff. And that was, this information is from registered dietitians, but this food stuff quickly gets into our bloodstream, strikes our blood sugar, and then we plummet or we crash, and then we're hungrier again sooner. So we tend to, not only are we spiking our sugars in our blood, it also encourages us to eat more because I'm hungrier later. So these are those simple carbohydrates as opposed to the complex carbohydrates that stay in our system longer. Our body just metabolizes them differently, and it's much healthier for us. Trans fats, hopefully you know by now, trans fats are not good for us, and hopefully they're not really in a lot of our foods anymore. But then there's sodas and diet sodas, and there's a lot of information again out there about sodas and diet sodas and the type of sugar or sweeteners that they use. The research really suggests is to cut back immensely on sodas because they are just not good for our whole any organ in our bodies because of the acid and how they're processed and all of the sugars that are in them, whether it's artificial sugars or natural sugars. But if you are going to opt for a soda, most experts say go with the non-diet, so the higher sugars, because those sugars, we know a little bit more about them. While it's a lot of sugar in one drink, we know we're not as familiar with how the artificial sugars are affecting our body. So when they are coming out with new artificial sugars like stevias and monk fruits and all those things that are really derived from plants and are thought to be safe. But again, they're fairly new, so we don't have a lot of research on them as far as the long term goes. So, but you might opt for those anyway. And then just quickly, I'll talk about amount of food, particularly in our Western diet. Our bodies, we tend to eat more food than our bodies need. So it goes back to think about, well, do we eat to live or live to eat? And how much food does my body really need to function optimally? Because if I'm eating massive amounts every time I sit down for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I might be drained later. My body's having a much harder time digesting it because there's so much food in there. I get full, and that can be draining as well. So we really just need to eat the amount of food that's best for our bodies and not necessarily what's served to us. So that might be taking stuff home, cutting it in half, sharing with somebody else. And that can also be obviously positive benefits on your waistline, on your brain health, but also your pocketbook health too. All right, so let's talk about exercise. So as we age, I want you to see this. This is from the AARP, but that regular exercise added to an active lifestyle will help you stay mentally fit. So you're going to say physically fit, right? But also mentally fit. But it's talking about active lifestyle and exercise. So there's two things there. And what exactly does that mean? Again, just like I said with the diet, before you start any exercise program, please talk to a trusted doctor to make sure that it's safe, because safety is our number one priority here for this. But it has been well documented that exercise, physical activity, is one of the most beneficial ways and one of the most cost-effective ways to improve your memory and your executive functioning in your brain, your visuofacial skills, your speed, processing speed, and just normal aging in adults. So exercise can improve our memory, but it also gets greater blood flow to our hippocampus. And if you think back when I first started, a normal part of aging is sometimes the hippocampus area of our brain may shrink a little bit. But if I'm getting more blood flow to my hippocampus, that can maybe offset that shrinkage, or it just strengthens the neuronal connections in my hippocampus. So physical activity improves so many things, not only physical health, but all the areas of our body, whether it's logic-based, verbal-based, so physiological benefits and also psychological benefits as well. Okay. So it's, it can increase the volume of our hippocampus, but also the prefrontal cortex, which both of those specifically can decrease just as a normal part of aging. And it talks about combining aerobics and strength training, which we'll talk about the best exercises to do. But if we can doing aerobic exercise and then add some strength training too, it can really increase your odds of reducing risk for Alzheimer's disease. And there are just so many cognitive benefits. Some exercise is better than none. It doesn't matter when you start. It doesn't matter how old you are. It's the benefits. You will see the benefits no matter where you started. Maybe you've never done physical or done some exercises, or it's been a really long time. or you think you're too old, whatever it is, we just got to start doing it and we're going to start seeing the benefits. But also know as we're talking about exercise, that this is not just kind of a 1 week thing, or I'm going to do it a few times. A few times will benefit you for those few times, but this has to be a part of our long-term routine, and it's just got to be a part of our lifestyle. So keep that in mind as we're starting this. It's really, we're really asking you the same thing with the diet. These incorporating these positive things into our diet is part of a lifelong routine. Starting getting more physical, having physical movement throughout the day, starting an exercise routine is part of a lifelong routine. And starting at any age is great. So we know with exercise, it's heart health, it's brain health, heart health, right? So it's going to increase the blood flow. It strengthens the blood vessels. It's going to help carry that oxygenated blood to our brain. I mentioned earlier, our brain takes about 25% of our oxygen, 25% of all the nutrients we eat, 70% of all the glucose, but I have to have a strong heart to pump all that up to my brain through the bloodstream. And our exercise and physical activity helps with that. It can lower our blood pressure, reduce our risk for a host of other illnesses, cardiovascular illnesses, diabetes, cancers, you name it. It strengthens our bones. It strengthens our muscles. It can help decrease our risk for falls, or even if maybe we have had a fall, if I start doing some aerobic exercise and even some strength training, I can get my strength back and my confidence back too. So this helps with the confidence. Sometimes it may not be strength, it's also confidence. So we have confidence on our own 2 feet, right? It can increase the brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And this is a molecule that encourages growth between our neurons and strengthens our neurons. So I mentioned earlier, we are always able to grow new neurons and strengthen those neurons. And that happens through the brain-derived neurotrophic factor molecule. So if we might have to increase that through our exercise and physical activity. It enhances our cognitive control, reduces impulsivity. It helps us make better decisions. It helps reduce our stress level, of course. And then it also tends to boost our mood and our energy level. And then it sharpens our mental processing. So there's really no disadvantage to exercising by any means. It improves our sleep. It can help establish a sleep-wake cycle if we are having some challenges with sleeping, or help promote sleep. And we'll talk more about that next month, but it does ease symptoms of depression and anxiety when part of a lifelong routine. And exercise is actually a alternative therapy for those who have been diagnosed with depression. And certain diets are also alternative therapies as well. And I mentioned aerobic exercise and weight training are the best combination, because it helps with the brain being more flexible. It helps keep the plasticity of the brain, but it's also just working out all the areas of our brain. Here's just some research on exercise. I'll point out, if you wanted to go learn more about it yourself, this is just a few studies that I wanted to include, but over 1,740 people 65 and older who exercised more than 3 times a week were 34% less likely to develop dementia. They also scored higher on test of attention, verbal fluency, and memory. So it's exercise 3 times a week, okay? The second one there from the Public Library of Science, people who had the mild cognitive impairment. The study, they were either put into a group that had multi-component exercise or an educational control group. And the ones that were in that multi-component exercise group show improved logical memory, maintained where they were at, maintained their cognitive function, so they didn't go on to develop another brain change. They reduced the potential atrophy in their brain, lowered their cholesterol, and increased that brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which encourages growth between those neurons. And then the Northeastern University study. They did 6 months of exercise, was shown to produce visible functional changes in the brain, even on those who had begun to see cognitive decline, started to show improvements as they became more active. So really, just study after study on the importance of and the benefits of physical exercise and physical activity and exercise. But everybody asks, well, how much exercise am I supposed to be doing, right? And this is, most people advise it's 30 minutes of moderate physical activity most days of the week. So that's 5 to 6 days a week. 150 minutes, if you're doing 30 minutes, that's 5 days a week. Let's say maybe you need to do 25 minutes, and that's 25 minutes, 6 days a week, okay? If you can do that, I would say that we start that at the minimal amount. If you can increase the time, then you're giving your brain just more benefits, right? If it seems daunting, even like a 30-minute session or a 20-minute session, break it up. You know, to start off with, if you haven't done exercise in a little while, or you're gonna, slowly get back into it, don't do something that seems that it's daunting. Don't set yourself up for failure. Really set yourself up for success and say, you know what, 30 minutes seems like a lot, like a full 30-minute set of moderate physical activity. And let me back up. Moderate physical activity means that you are sweating, you are breathing hard, and your heart rate is beating, and it is in your target heart rate. Okay. Your target heart rate can be figured out, or ask your doctor what your target heart rate is. And this all comes back when you're talking to your doctor. What is the best target heart rate? For me, because of my age, my weight, any other illnesses you're living with, I need you to tell me what's my target heart rate. And I need to be in that target heart rate for the 30 minutes. Okay. So, but it may seem like, gosh, that seems like a long time. Or you need to work your way up to it. Then chunk that time into smaller pieces, because it might be 7 minutes here, then I do 7 minutes in an hour, and then I do 7 minutes. But it's that time that's in your target heart rate. If you need to add more chunks throughout the day, then you do that. And then increase your time. So maybe you start with 7 minutes for 2 weeks, and then the next 2 weeks, you're going to go to 10 minutes. Okay, so you increase your time to where you are doing consistently at 30 minutes in your target heart rate. And it's also, because we mentioned exercise and physical activity. So it's both. It is the exercise routine, but it's also moving more throughout the day. It's not having a sedentary lifestyle, but then you go exercise for 30 minutes. Because that really kind of offsets the benefits of the exercise if the rest of the day I'm sedentary, or I'm behind a computer. Me and Marty were talking about this earlier. Or I'm in traffic a lot. I commute from work to home, or I'm, for work, and then I go caregive for somebody, and I'm just in the car so often. Or I come home and I'm tired, so I sit down on the couch and I binge watch something. But I've exercised this morning and I got my 30 minutes in, and that's better than not doing it. But it's also offsetting the benefits from that exercise. So it's move more throughout the day. And I'm not saying you have to exercise all day long. It's just moving more throughout the day. So it's getting up and walking around the office, or walking around the home, or walking to and from the mailbox a couple of times, getting up and moving around. And this is an example of some exercise that you can do. Not all exercises are listed here, right? But it is that cardiovascular exercise, aerobic exercise. So this is what gets our heart rate up. This is an example of some of those, okay? But then there's the strength training that I mentioned. If you can aim so the aerobic exercise, you want to do that. That's the 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, or it's 150 minutes a week. Okay, you want to make sure you're doing that. But then we want to aim for some strength training. And that might be 2 30-minute sessions. It might be a couple of 20-minute sessions throughout the week. And if we're doing the strength training, we want to incorporate all muscle groups. So we're working out the muscle groups of our arms, our shoulders, our abs, our legs, So we're working the full body with that strength training. And you can use your own body weight. You can use machines. You can use dumbbells or free weights. You can use resistant bands. You can use cans of artichokes that you have in your cabinet, just some resistance that your muscles have to go through. Or if you have access to a pool, it's, it's walking through the water that not only is aerobic, but you're having to, resisting through with the resistance with your muscles as well. So a lot of ways to get both aerobic exercise with strength training. And then there's the mind-body exercise as well. So this is yoga or Tai Chi or there's chair yoga, there's stretching. This is a type of exercise that we're using movement through our body that's connected with our breath. Okay, so it helps us. There also can be strength training as well, because most of the time they're slow, purposeful movements. So we have to engage our muscles in a different way. And so it engages those muscles and can add more strength to them. So we say, maybe you can do 1 or 2 sessions of these a week on top of the aerobic exercise that you're doing. A great way to do this, and I've been doing this for about a year now, but I will do 20 minutes of an aerobic exercise. I'll do 20 minutes of some strength training, and then I'll do 20 minutes of yoga and stretching. Now that's an hour of work, but I'm breaking it down. I'm getting those 3 types of exercise in within my hour. I'm not going target heart rate, high intensity exercise for 30 minutes. I do moderate intensity for 20 minutes. I do my strength training, which is fairly moderate intense activity. And then each time I do the strength training, I change the muscles that I'm working on. And then I do either yoga or some stretching and stuff like that for 20 minutes. So that might be a regimen that you try as well. Or starting to kind of think about it, think outside the box. How can we incorporate this into our daily lives to make sure that it's a lifelong routine? Mm-hmm. And it is, exercise is just one part of this overall fitness, because we want to engage in the exercise, but we also want to pay attention to how much are we moving throughout the day, right? So some of us might be like, you know what, I'm going to start with moving more throughout the day. That's what I'm going to start with. And next week, I'm going to start incorporating some actual exercise routines, but I'm going to get used to movement more throughout the day. And this practice safety first. Again, this is just talking to your doctor before you start any type of exercise program or changing your diet as well. We want to take special precautions, particularly if you're living with a heart disease or arthritis or something like that. And this is a great idea just to start tracking progress, because it can help us stay on track. It can help us stay motivated, but we can see the results, okay, as long as we're measuring them. And this, I would say, with diet and exercise, track your progress. Do you see a change in your weight loss? And it might not be a change in what the scale says, but are your clothes fitting differently? So just the composition of how your body's changing different, which has to come down with how your muscles are changing. Do you have more endurance? Do you notice that you started off with 7 minutes, but now you're able to do 15 minutes? Have you gotten faster at something? Whatever it is, but know that we need to start at a place that's feasible and maintainable for us to continue to grow. You can join classes. I know the YMCA has classes, there's gyms, but you can also just go out and walk outside. If you're in Texas, please be aware of the heat and of course the weather, but maybe you can get in friendly competitions with your neighbors, maybe the people that you live with, maybe it's coworkers you get into competitions with, friendly ones, of course, right, that we're promoting positive changes. Try something new. Maybe you take a new class or you go do this yoga thing that they're offering at the local community center. Go try something new and take some friends with you. And maybe you have an accountability partner. And then there are smart apps that can help you track your progress, but also a great way to see the needle, move the needle, but they can also motivate you. They can remind you to get up and move. You've been sitting for an hour, get up and move. Track your diet, track the food that you've been eating, 100 different things you can do. You got to choose the right smart app for you or app or anything like that. Again, we don't endorse anything or recommend anyone. You just got to find the right one for you when it comes to tracking progress. But we always strive for progress, not perfection. Okay. And it's making those small changes and keep adding to those small changes. Because once I've got this small change down and now it's part of what I do and who I am, I can add the next one. And we do want to reward ourselves along the way. Keep variety or add variety and keep it simple. Develop a plan because life will knock you off your tracks. But knowing that that will happen and know what to do when to get back on the tracks and being flexible. I would say find the exercise that you enjoy doing, okay? Because you're not going to continue to do it if you don't enjoy it. So find that that exercise that you enjoy doing. And I'll also say the best time for you to exercise is the time that you're going to go exercise. So don't trick yourself into saying, well, I didn't get up early this morning to do it, so I guess I can't exercise. It's really the best time or exercise. The best time for you to exercise is the time that you will go exercise. So, and then talk to your trusted doctor for all of this stuff. In an aging brain, with your brain optimally and your brain intact, incorporates all of these influencers on our brain health, but of course our whole person health as well. We talked a lot about diet and exercise today. Next month, we will talk about sleep and stress. Don't be surprised if you don't hear about how important our diet and exercise are to our sleep and stress. Kind of tease some of that today as well. But this is some of our information if you have any questions and our continuing education. So just as a reminder, Marty will send out an email this either today or tomorrow with the copy of these slides, some other information, other upcoming programs. But also if you are wanting CE credits for today's program, there will be a link to a SurveyMonkey evaluation. If you will, please click on that link. It's required for you to complete the evaluation to obtain your CE credits. And if you will allow us about 4 weeks to process all those and get them back out to you through the email. And I will let Marty talk about the Google survey.
Right. And please make note that there's 2 different surveys, the SurveyMonkey and the Google survey. The Google survey should pop up or give you a chance to go to it and fill out a short survey as you close out of Zoom today. But please note the Google survey is for us, the Area Agency on Aging, for reporting back on our goals and objectives we set forth when we started doing these webinars. The SurveyMonkey is required if you're looking for any kind of certificate. We ask you to fill out both, even if you're not looking for a certificate, because they all help us and guide us as we do this work going forward. I'll say a few things. First of all, there's about 5 things in the Q&A. Somebody raised their hand, and I haven't checked yet. Maybe they've gone down, and maybe they put it down. If you have, please put anything you questions or anything in the Q&A, and we'll try to get to them here in just a minute. So, Jamie?
Yes, let me stop scrambling.
One of them is a teaser because it's about sleep.
Oh, okay. Perfect. So one of them is a lack of the ability to multitask as you age, a warning sign of mild cognitive impairment or dementia or just normal aging. It is just normal aging. As we are younger, we multitask, and we probably have the wrong idea of how good we are at multitasking, but we do it anyway. But as we get older, multitasking becomes much harder, and that is a normal part of aging. So, and really ask yourself, am I really good at it anyway? Because most of us aren't. So my sleep hasn't been consistent, and I definitely feel I'm not operating on, but yes. So sleep, you have to have good quality sleep, which we'll talk about next month. And you will feel it throughout the day if your quality of sleep is really lacking. There is melatonin. It is safe to use. However, please talk to your doctor and pharmacist about it. Melatonin is a natural occurring hormone that our bodies don't produce as well as we get older, but it does help promote sleep, and you can buy it over the counter. Again, that's it's considered a supplement, so it's not really regulated. So you want to talk to a doctor or pharmacist about the best brand to buy, but also asking the dosage and when you need to take it. So you really want to get with a doctor about it, but it is safe to use. And then is sugar, alcohol safe or should they be avoided? They are, I don't know that I would say if you can avoid them, that's a good question. I would say they're better than other sugars. It's our body metabolize them and recognize them differently. So I would say if you can avoid them, great. However, they're different than having like an artificial sweetener and having high levels of sugar into your in your food that you're eating. But I would say every once in a while, I think it's perfectly fine. Again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a registered dietitian. You want to look at your own specific body makeup. But there's also some conflicting science out there about sugar alcohols too. So you might be asking your trusted doctor, well, what they think and what's the best one to go for and all that stuff. Hope that kind of answers your question. More and more is coming out about seed oils and how they're not good for us, like canola, vegetable, soybean. What are my thoughts on oils and the brain? My thoughts on oils and the brain is that you want to maybe rely on, and the oils that we use are processed. So all of those olive oils are processed. So really what I try to practice is you do a little oil to get the pan hot, right? And I would use extra virgin olive oil or grapeseed extract oil. But then continue as you're making your food, add more water to help with that than oils. There is also like what is it, coconut oil, which which is not a seed oil, but you can use that. It does kind of change the flavor of your food a little bit. It is high in saturated fats, but that's generally more of a safe oil. I generally lean towards the extra virgin olive oils and the grapeseed extracts, but also know that all of those are processed. So and if you look at the serving size on it and how much you're supposed to use, I think I personally use too much oil in my stuff, but water works just as effectively. So I hope that kind of answers your question. And are there any of these healthy habits most helpful with our ability to strengthen and make new neurons throughout our lifespan? Or are they all equally important? So all the healthy habits that we talked about are important. I would say if you were going to start with one of them, I would start with exercise. It has the most benefits, particularly about making new neurons and helping increase the neuroplasticity in the brain, because it's just so good for your heart. I mean, diet is as well, but it's so good for making sure all that nutrients and oxygen gets up to our brain so it can help with the development, but also offset some of the normal things that come, like with the shrinkage of the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex. So I would start with exercise. And then I have at least 2 glasses of Chardonnay a day. Is that bad? I'm not your doctor. I don't know the answer to that. I know that the science and all the research says it's 1 glass and it's 1 serving size. So what's a serving size? 6 ounces. It's 1 glass a day. But I'm not you, Deborah, and I'm not your doctor. I mean, I would ask your doctor about it, right?
I would tell you that my grandfather had at least one a day, and he lived to be 97, but
Yeah.
and had a clear mind to the day he died. But obviously, that is just every individual, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to share my screen real quick. I just want to go over the upcoming webinars that are at the end of the slide thing.
Yeah.
No, there you go. I'm sorry, it's not a slide thing, but our next webinar is on July 9th. It is the second in the series, and it's sleep and stress. And so please join us for that and help us to get the word out. But in addition to that, we have a Spanish webinar at the end of July too. If you could all help us get the word out about that as well. Both of those, the links to the flyers and registration will all be in the follow-up email I send out to you. And it will go out tomorrow. It will not go out today. I have a commitment I'm going to leave for. So
It must go out today, Marty. No.
yes, I know. And then sometimes I end up with a glitch, and twice happened recently. I didn't get them out till the day after that. but you just never know how technology is going to treat you.
Yeah.
So, but Jamie, thank you so very much. As you see, I don't know if you see in the chat, but there's a huge number of compliments. And as always, exceptional job. There's one more question somebody asked about Coke Zero.
Oh, what about Coke Zero? I want to say Coke Zero has the artificial sweetener in it. So one every so often is not going to hurt you, I don't think, depending on the person. But I would not drink a bunch of Coke Zeros throughout the day. I just wouldn't drink sodas throughout the day because it's just so harmful for your whole body, all the organs. But I mean, it's looking at what's in their artificial sweeteners and knowing that really none of it's good for you. So if you can switch over to like if it's the carbonation, maybe you can do mineral waters like Topo Chicos or something like that to help kind of wean yourself off of those. And you can add limes to the mineral waters for the carbonation and things like that. But those are a healthier choice than sodas across the board.
But I can say that since Dr. Pepper has the name doctor in it, it's really good for you because I can't live without it.
No, do not listen to Marty or what he has to say about Dr. Peppers.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. There really needs to be a way to push the mute button on me. Okay.
No, we appreciate it.
Jamie,
And I
thank you.
there was a lot of information in today's and kind of a lot of details. But please take what you needed. And then as Marty gave you a copy of the slides, go back and read them. This will be downloaded to his YouTube channel because there is a lot of details in there, but just take what you need, start slow, and just start doing easy things that you can start to incorporate in your daily life.
Yeah, I'm starting to catch up on getting. I had a real glitch in my processing system, but I'm starting to get caught up on the videos. This will be put up on our YouTube channel. Once it is, you will receive a second follow-up email from me with a link directly to that link for this video. But that will be later on, not in the email you get tomorrow. Thank you all. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Y'all have a wonderful day. Take care.